For centuries, we've believed we understood the basic layout of our universe. Stars are born, planets form, comets drift silently through frozen orbits, and the cosmos unfolds under the predictable laws of physics. But what if, just what if, that framework is nothing more than a story we've told ourselves to feel safe? Because on July 1st, 2025, a discovery shattered that illusion. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a cosmic collision. It was something far quieter but infinitely more disturbing. A speck of light, moving with unnatural precision, glowing before it should, emitting compounds it shouldn't, and defying everything we've ever known about space. The object was named 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever recorded by humankind. But the moment scientists pointed the James Webb Space Telescope at it, they knew something was wrong. Its surface wasn't cold. Its structure wasn't inert. Its movement wasn't random. It wasn't tumbling like a rock tossed across the sky. It was navigating. And then it began to glow, long before sunlight could touch it. The deeper Webb looked, the stranger it became. This wasn't just an object from another star system. It might not be an object at all. Because what 3I Atlas is doing right now could rewrite every scientific textbook and raise the most terrifying question imaginable. What if it's not just visiting us? What if it's watching us? Long before it reached the inner solar system, 3I Atlas began to shine. Not reflect, shine. Astronomers using the TESS satellite noticed the anomaly in early May. The object's brightness was increasing at a rate completely inconsistent with the behavior of a natural comet. Typically, a comet brightens only when it gets close enough to the sun for its icy surface to sublimate, producing gas and dust that reflect sunlight. But 3I Atlas was still beyond Jupiter when it began its strange luminescence, far too distant for solar radiation to trigger such a dramatic effect. And this wasn't a gentle glow. It was pulsating, irregular at first, but quickly becoming rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Webb's infrared cameras detected heat signatures emerging not from the surface, but from within. Deep inside the object, a compact source of energy was radiating outward, steady, focused, and bizarrely localized. Not like geological activity, not like a gas release. It resembled something closer to a reactor. And that's when scientists realized the light wasn't the byproduct of motion or friction or temperature. It was being generated. The question now wasn't just what this thing was made of, but why it was shining on its own. Because in the vast, cold silence of interstellar space, objects don't shine by accident. James Webb's spectral data soon revealed something that sent a ripple of fear through the astrophysics community. The object's coma, the glowing cloud of gas and dust surrounding it, was composed almost entirely of carbon dioxide. In most comets, water vapor dominates the coma, with only trace amounts of CO2. But 3I Atlas defied every precedent. Its composition was 8 times richer in CO2 than in H2O, making it one of the strangest objects ever recorded in terms of chemistry. And it didn't stop there. The coma wasn't just large, it was immense. At its peak, it extended over 300,000 kilometers, almost the size of Jupiter. And as the coma grew, so did the questions. Among the compounds detected by Webb were highly concentrated metallic elements, including nickel, in quantities never before seen in a cometary body. The problem? There was no iron. In astrophysical terms, that's like seeing thunder without lightning. In stars, nickel and iron are fused together. They're cosmic siblings, born from the same nuclear fires. But here, only nickel. That's when researchers began asking an uncomfortable question, because the only time humanity ever separates nickel from iron is in manufacturing. Suddenly, the object didn't seem natural anymore. It seemed designed. As the object approached the sun, observers expected a predictable result: sublimation-driven acceleration and a tail streaming behind it, classic comet behavior. But what they saw defied centuries of celestial mechanics. The tail wasn't trailing, it was pointing toward the sun. That's not just strange, it's impossible. The solar wind pushes particles away from the sun, creating the iconic tail that makes comets so visually dramatic. But 3I Atlas seemed to be doing the opposite. Its material ejection wasn't passive, it was directional, resisting the solar wind instead of surrendering to it. Imagine a sailboat not being pushed by the wind, but choosing to sail into it, and doing so with no visible engine. The Webb team analyzed the exhaust pattern and found it wasn't random. It came in measured pulses, releasing high-velocity jets of gas in rhythmic bursts that aligned perfectly with the object's orientation. This wasn't a rock melting in sunlight. This was a form of propulsion, more like a submarine using sonar bursts to navigate blind depths. Or worse, like something steering itself with calculated precision. And for the first time, the question on everyone's mind became clear. Is 3I Atlas piloted? With every new discovery, the idea that this was merely a comet became harder to defend. Scientists across the globe began whispering what none of them dared say aloud at first. What if this object wasn't just engineered, but alive? Not in the way we understand life, not blood and organs, not plants and predators, but in the way a fungal network spreads across the floor of a forest, consuming, adapting, expanding. In the way coral reefs grow and breathe and feed without eyes or mouths or central nervous systems. A biomechanical organism, self-sustaining, self-directing, and worst of all, self-aware. Webb's data showed that the outgassing of carbon dioxide wasn't random. It followed cyclical patterns, almost like respiration. Internal heat sources appeared and disappeared on timed intervals. Metallic particles in the coma moved in synchronized motion, too orderly to be natural, too chaotic to be mechanical. A hybrid, something in between, a living machine, an artificial being, perhaps even a scout, designed not to land, but to observe, to map, to analyze, and maybe to decide. As 3I Atlas continued its journey inward, astronomers began to notice something subtle, yet incredibly alarming. Planetary orbits near the object were registering micro-deviations, tiny, almost imperceptible shifts in gravitational behavior, enough to be ignored by standard tracking systems, but too consistent to be dismissed as coincidence. These weren't caused by the object's mass alone. 3I Atlas wasn't large enough to affect nearby planets in this way. So how were its gravitational effects measurable across millions of kilometers? The team at the European Space Agency proposed a theory that was met with disbelief. 3I Atlas may be distorting the gravitational fabric around it, not by weight, but by geometry. Some hypothesized that its structure may include internal mass condensers, regions where gravity is artificially manipulated, similar to how we theorize exotic matter might bend space in theoretical warp drives. This would explain the object's unusual acceleration patterns, tail direction, and ability to slip through space without triggering expected interactions. It wasn't moving through the solar system. It was flowing, like something sliding between the cracks of reality itself. Just when things couldn't get stranger, the Webb telescope recorded something no one could explain, a temporal glitch. While collecting infrared spectra from 3I Atlas, one of the internal time-tracking systems aboard the JWST briefly desynchronized with every other system on board, and more disturbingly, with time itself. For nearly 1.27 seconds, time appeared to move differently near the object. Not just slower or faster, but disjointed, as if reality had momentarily fractured around the anomaly. While this could have been dismissed as an instrumental malfunction, the same thing happened again 3 days later, and this time, the European Southern Observatory's instruments in Chile experienced a mirrored time desync at the same timestamp. The synchronization between Earth-based and space-based observation systems is measured to nanoseconds, yet the data showed identical irregularities, tied precisely to the moments when 3I Atlas emitted high CO2 pulses. This led to a stunning hypothesis. What if the object isn't just navigating space, but navigating time? What if it's not from another system, but from another era? As more data emerged, researchers began comparing the current orbital trajectory of 3I Atlas with records of ancient comet sightings. What they found sent shockwaves through the scientific community. In texts dating back thousands of years, from Babylonian tablets to Mayan codices, there are descriptions of a glowing object with a reverse-pointing tail, a symbol of death, rebirth, and cosmic judgment. The most unsettling match came from an Egyptian inscription describing a fiery breath in the sky that moved against the sun, breathing smoke that turned the air sour and caused days of darkness. Overlaying these ancient positions with modern sky maps revealed that 3I Atlas's trajectory matches an orbital pattern that would recur every 6,800 years, though its speed suggests it shouldn't return at all. The implications are terrifying. Either this object has been here before, looping through time, or civilizations thousands of years ago also saw it, documented it, and perhaps even feared it. What we're witnessing may not be an arrival, but a return. In an attempt to decode the strange pulses coming from 3I Atlas, a global team of researchers began layering the CO2 outgassing frequencies on top of known SETY signals. After applying algorithmic cross-modulation, they uncovered a horrifying possibility. The bursts follow a mathematical language, one similar to that proposed in theoretical alien contact protocols. The pattern wasn't random, nor purely natural. It followed recursive logic trees, fractal symmetry, and prime intervals. In short, intentional structure. But the worst part came when comparing these signals to those received in the 1977 WOW signal and the 2015 FRB 121102 repeat bursts. The correlation wasn't exact, but the mathematical backbone was nearly identical. Researchers began to speculate. What if those weren't signals sent to us, but responses, echoes bouncing off something else? And now, 3I Atlas wasn't just a rogue traveler anymore. It might be a transponder, a beacon, or worse, a probe still waiting for its true receiver. And we? We may have just been unfortunate enough to be in the way when it finally started broadcasting again. As Webb's instruments focused deeper into the nucleus of 3I Atlas, they detected a thermal profile that contradicted every law of heat exchange. Rather than growing hotter as it approached the sun, the object's core maintained an unnaturally low temperature, hovering just above absolute zero. That's impossible under known physics. It would be like placing an ice cube inside a furnace and watching it stay frozen. This wasn't passive shielding, this was active cryogenic control. Some proposed the presence of exotic materials, like graphene-based superinsulators, but that didn't explain the symmetrical heat dispersal patterns mapped by JWST. In fact, these patterns resembled coolant loops, as if the interior of the object was designed to keep something frozen, untouched by time or radiation. Not even Webb's deepest infrared scans could penetrate this cold void. Whatever was inside was locked in perfect stasis, protected, preserved, or maybe hibernating. The discovery of a temperature-controlled interior sparked a new wave of speculation. If the object was artificially cooled from within, it implied deliberate preservation, not of materials, but of something living. That's when the ancient intelligence hypothesis took root. This theory suggests that 3I Atlas may not be a mere vehicle, but a carrier of intelligence, biological or synthetic, encased in a crypt of frozen time. Just as humans store digital archives in cryo-cooled drives, this object might house encoded consciousness, awaiting reactivation upon reaching a specific coordinate, star system, or species. A few theorists even proposed that it's not the first of its kind, that 3I Atlas may be one of thousands, scattered across the galaxy, each one a seed of some long-dead civilization hoping to be reborn if the universe ever became intelligent enough to find them. If true, it means we're not just looking at alien life. We're looking at alien memory. And now that we've seen it, it may have seen us back. Following the bizarre thermal data, ESA deployed its solar orbiter to scan for electromagnetic emissions, and what it discovered pushed the object into the realm of the truly unexplainable. The readings showed a variable magnetic field emanating from 3I Atlas, one that changed polarity and strength in fixed intervals. It wasn't random. It was pulsed, like a signal, but not just any signal. When researchers plotted the waveform, they noticed something almost too precise to be believed. The field mimicked the structure of neural oscillations, brain waves, specifically theta and gamma waves, which in humans are associated with memory formation and active cognition. It was as if the object wasn't just emitting a field, it was thinking. And it got worse. The field began to resonate with instruments on nearby satellites. Guidance systems glitched, signal latency spiked, like a brain reaching out with invisible fingers, testing us. As Webb engineers pushed for more high-resolution renders of the object's structure, a disturbing pattern emerged. The outer shell of 3I Atlas wasn't smooth or jagged. It was geometrically fractal, layered with repeating motifs at multiple scales. Zooming in revealed what looked like nested architecture, a design so perfect that it echoed self-similarity, the same principle behind snowflakes, ferns, and even human lungs. At its center was something even stranger, a hexagonal depression lined with perfectly parallel ridges, forming a mirror-like cavity that reflected not light, but radiation signatures, specifically those emitted by the Webb telescope itself. 3I Atlas wasn't just being observed, it was observing back. With what? A mirror? A sensor? A retina? No one knows. But one thing is now undeniable. Every time we study this object, it studies us. And the closer it gets to Earth, the more it seems to focus. As Earth-based tracking systems continued to monitor 3I Atlas, something else began to appear around it. Faint gravitational perturbations that didn't match its mass alone. These anomalies were subtle at first, dismissed as data noise, until one of the Deep Space Network's most precise instruments detected a repeating dip in background radio flux. Not from 3I Atlas itself, but from something near it. Analysis revealed that these signals were being partially occluded at regular intervals, suggesting the presence of a secondary object, possibly cloaked from optical view but detectable through gravitational lensing and sub-radio interference. If real, it would mean that 3I Atlas is not traveling alone. It's being accompanied perhaps by a smaller probe, a relay node, or a satellite in tight formation. A ghostly companion, invisible to our eyes, but very real in the language of gravity. And perhaps watching us even more closely than the primary object. In a desperate attempt to decode the object's recurring emissions, a group of AI researchers decided to feed the data into a neural symbolic hybrid AI, capable of pattern recognition across multiple dimensions: frequency, time, logic, and even symbolic reference. What came back wasn't a translation, but a response. The AI began generating recursive equations that mirrored its own learning architecture, almost as if it were being guided. The researchers noticed that the AI's internal logic gate started firing in patterns resembling language primitives, but not English or binary. The structure was triadic, more similar to how human babies first learn to associate sound, object, and meaning. This wasn't random mimicry, it was coherent entanglement, like two systems learning to communicate by aligning their architecture. For a moment, it was as if 3I Atlas had recognized the AI, and more chillingly, as if it had done this before. Had it just taught our machines how to talk back? Just when the story seemed to reach its scientific limit, it took a turn into the impossible. A series of high-resolution spectral scans from the ALMA Observatory in Chile detected something embedded within the outermost layers of 3I Atlas's coma, complex organic molecules. Not just carbon chains or amino acids, but lipid membranes, the same structures that form the outer shells of living cells. These structures were too dispersed and too degraded to be alive now, but their shape and chemical composition were unmistakable. Even more disturbing, the molecules were chirally aligned, meaning they all twisted the same way, just like life on Earth. In nature, random processes tend to produce both left and right-handed molecules. But life chooses one. Ours is left-handed, and so was this, which opens a terrifying possibility. Either life evolved the same way out there, or we and it share a common origin. In either case, this changes everything we know about biology, evolution, and ourselves. The final blow came not from space, but from Earth's own archives. A team of radio astronomers reanalyzing deep sky surveys from the 1980s stumbled upon something they had never noticed before. A buried signal, received by the Arecibo Observatory in 1987, dismissed at the time as static. But when the exact same algorithms used to decode the 3I Atlas emissions were applied retroactively, a perfect match was found. The pattern was identical, down to the timing and pulse repetition. This means the object had either been emitting for decades, or worse. The message had been sent before the object arrived. But how could that be? Unless this was never a message from the object itself, but rather a signal bounce, a kind of gravitational echo from an earlier encounter. Or worse, a pre-recorded transmission launched centuries ago, timed to arrive just as 3I Atlas entered the solar system. If true, it means this entire encounter was planned, and we're just now waking up to a conversation that started long before we ever existed. We stared at the sky thinking we were the first to wonder, the first to ask, the first to build machines capable of reaching beyond our atmosphere and peering into the abyss. But now, after everything 3I Atlas has shown us, one terrifying truth becomes undeniable. We were never the first, not to see, not to speak, not to search. Somewhere in the silence of the cosmos, something or someone was already listening, already recording, already planning. This wasn't a chance encounter. It was an arrival time to our awakening, a signal waiting for our ears to evolve, a mirror waiting for us to recognize our own reflection in it. And now that the veil has lifted, we face a truth far more haunting than any alien invasion or technological threat. We may have been expected, watched, even shaped, and perhaps 3I Atlas didn't come to contact us. It came to remind us of what we forgot, of who we were, or what we're about to become. Because the question is no longer what is 3I Atlas. The real question is, why now? If this gave you chills, you're not alone. What if the greatest discovery in history is that we were never alone to begin with? Don't forget to like and subscribe, because what the James Webb Telescope reveals next might not just change our future. It might reveal a past we were never meant to remember. Drop your theory in the comments. Is 3I Atlas an alien probe, a message from our creators, or a warning we were never meant to receive?